welcome to the program. This is Vivica Williams, and you're watching Head to Head. Today, we want to talk about the efforts of NGOs in Ukraine. These organizations, both international and national, are helping to alleviate suffering around the country, are empowering people to get involved in their communities, and working in all spheres of social life. So we've brought in Frederic Larsson, the director of Ukraine NGO Forum, to talk about the role of NGOs in Ukraine. Fred, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
So tell me, then, what are some of the main humanitarian issues that are going on in Ukraine where NGOs are trying to make a difference?
I mean, now in 2017, we have seen an increase in the humanitarian needs. And we have both national NGOs as well as international NGOs trying to alleviate the suffering from those people suffering from conflict. Foremost in eastern Ukraine. And it can be anything from water project, or now in the winterization. There can be food insecurities and so on.
And so where we see, most people know about some of the major international NGOs. What are some of the most active national NGOs, if you can talk about that?
I think it's important when we talk about NGOs in Ukraine to note that NGOs in Ukraine are extremely strong and have been strong for many, many years. Long before we had an influx of international humanitarian NGOs in Ukraine. And it's also important to note that the first, second and third responders to the humanitarian crisis in the east of Ukraine were Ukrainian NGOs. Right. It was not the international NGOs, it was not the UN, but it was in fact Ukrainian NGOs.
Well, and also it's because they have a connection to the community, right? They know what's going on. So what then do these Ukrainian NGOs need to be able to have stronger capacity?
I mean, I think if we look at Ukrainian NGOs specifically, while we had a very, very strong civil society in Ukraine, and I mean, Ukrainian NGOs are a key agent of change in Ukraine. I mean, independently, if we're talking about tax reform or if we're talking about anti-corruption or whatever issue. But I think Ukrainian NGOs, they did not have the humanitarian experience. And that was, of course, something where there was a new challenge. It was a new challenge with the war, with the crisis, and so many influx of
from Crimea, from
Crimea, from the eastern part of Ukraine, and. When we look at that, while they were very motivated, I think, and did an absolutely fantastic job, some of the international practices is always important to take into account when you're trying to deliver, for example, humanitarian aid within the contact line, everything from security to accountability to neutrality.
And this is kind of where my understanding is where Ukraine NGO Forum comes in. Because this, I think, is a big issue, is the coordination of international and national NGOs creating this connection. So what's the role of the Ukraine NGO Forum?
We try, the NGO Forum, or the forum as we say, we try to facilitate synergies, capacity building, information sharing between NGOs. Trying to provide a forum where actually Ukrainian NGOs and international NGOs can speak together and to make a response more effective with higher quality and trying really to reach the people that needs assistance.
So what are some examples of actual projects that have been used to try to facilitate this?
We are the SWIR focal point in Ukraine. So SWIR standards were developed in '97, I think, and the thinking behind it was to have some minimum standards when it comes to how to deliver humanitarian aid.
And so, what does SWIR mean, or does it have
I think it's a name. It's possibly it's an acronym of some sort, but it's a name of where all humanitarian, many humanitarian actors, global actors, NGOs come together and define or try to define and help other NGOs, for example, to look at minimum standards to increase the accountability of NGOs working, for example, in Ukraine.
And this is really necessary. I mean, if there's no accountability, you can't really track and see how effective it is or how to improve. So,
correct. So within the sphere standards, we would have standards with everything from food security to nutrition to water to anything you can imagine which can be a problem here in Ukraine.
So this is one of the things that the Ukraine NGO Forum has helped, is to try to connect these NGOs to try to help them create accountability and to get them involved in communicating.
Specifically on the sphere standards, this is something we provide on a fairly regular basis. Capacity building. We're trying to build capacity especially within national NGOs, but we also do TOT trainings, training of trainers, so we can have a better spread when it comes to sphere standards, for example. Yeah.
And how many NGOs are involved or members of the NGO Forum?
Yes, currently we have some 39 members and another 15 applicants at the moment. But we over the last 6 months, I think we have trained more than 1,000 people.
So it's not just involved in the members.
It's not only.
Right.
Yes, but it's important to have trying to include as much of civil society as possible in everything from coordination or speaking with each other. I think.
And one of the major things as well is this train the trainer. I think it's so that you're allowing other people to go and to spread this type of ideas of accountability and facilitation.
Yeah. I mean, there's also something I think many international NGOs, they want to. What we're actually here to raise the capacity of national NGOs. I mean, we need to build Ukrainian ability to respond to this crisis and the future crisis. I think we have many NGOs here right now from for example Poland or from the Czech Republic, and I would like to see. I mean, we have the resources in Ukraine when it comes to both knowledge and education, and I would like to see Ukrainian NGOs engaging in and trying to help others. Perhaps in 20 years from now, we will see Ukrainian international NGOs.
International.
Yeah, helping out in other humanitarian.
Well, and hopefully it's because also they're going to have some best practices. There's going to be some learning.
Sure.
So it comes down, I think maybe the key word here is sustainability, creating a sustainable NGO system.
Yeah, when responding to a humanitarian crisis or even when we look at doing something about development needs, for example, I mean, one of the most important thing is to have ownership from civil society, from NGOs, and Ukrainian civil society, Ukrainian NGOs. The foreigners can come here all the time, and they leave. Yeah, they leave, but we need to leave something here in Ukraine, which makes the response sustainable, and that I think is an important thing.
Well, and let's talk about a few of your projects. So tell me more about, I think it's the NGO hubs that you have in the Donbass region.
We have an NGO hub in Kramatorsk. We also have civil society hubs in Starobilsk, Krasny Liman, and Severodonetsk. And those are actually run by national NGOs. And what we are doing basically is just supporting these national NGOs to be able to address some of the needs which they have identified within these areas. What is important for them? There can be interaction between IDPs and the local community. Can be anything from targeting youth, for example, training youth in English. That can be another thing. It can be to address psychological needs, which is a big problem right now, especially in Eastern Ukraine.
Wow, so this is really great. This facilitation and providing support so that this is not where an international NGO is coming in, as we said, and starting something and then they leave and it's not sustainable. This is really focusing on developing Ukrainian NGOs and their capacity to continue something that's more important to them than it would be to any international NGO. They live in that community.
I think that's very, very important. But I think also international NGOs have a role to play in the way that they can they have the experience from on specific topics, on specific other areas, geographical. They might have been working on humanitarian crises all around the world, but also have an access perhaps to donors which a national NGO in Ukraine, in a specific city, in Krasnodar, for example, does not have.
And we're almost out of time, but one thing I really also want to talk about is your project with NGO for English. And this is something that's really excited me and anyone I've mentioned it to, because it seems that this course that you offer is a combination of being able to learn and use English while also learning about NGO terminology. Tell us a bit about this course.
Okay. So
and I think you have the book you can show us.
This is the book, yeah. This is, I think, a most popular project, actually. We found there was a great need of trying to include Ukrainian NGOs specifically, and Ukrainian staff of international NGOs in the overall coordination, to be able to, and information sharing, to be able to share their knowledge and their interests, and to be able to advocate for their interests.
And it's a lot about being able to speak the language.
Yes. So U.S. Embassy, together with the U.S. Embassy, we developed a specific course for humanitarian NGOs. So it includes everything from how to develop a project to how to participate in coordination mechanisms to write how to report to a donor, for example. But the most, I mean, what is really interesting about this project is, while the people participated in the project, they were learning English. But some of the good thing that came out of it was actually the connection between different NGOs, just because they learned English together, that they developed projects together, they were able to find synergies between the different organizations and became friends. So
this sounds like an exceptional project here, exceptional project. Thank you so much for being with us here today, Fred.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Today we were speaking with Fred Larsson, the director of Ukraine NGO Forum, and talking about the role of NGOs in Ukraine. Thank you for watching.